Hello, my friends. Today we are headed to the coast. We are joined by author, sea turtle enthusiast, and unofficial tour guide of the Wilmington, North Carolina area, Suzanne Goodwyn. If you have walked along the North Carolina coastline, you have probably seen them on the beach. Wooden stakes with orange plastic tape wrapped around them, marking off a large square space. Every morning, volunteers walk the length of the beach looking for sea turtle tracks in the sand leading to freshly laid nests. Tracking sea turtle nests is so popular in coastal towns, volunteer organizations have wait lists for people who want to join. It was during one of her visits to Wilmington that Suzanne Goodwyn saw her first nest and became interested in sea turtles. She was so taken with learning about them that when it came time to determine a career for Jess, a character in her book Wrightsville Beach, she chose for her to be a sea turtle biologist. This gave her the opportunity to research sea turtles with experts in the field and to share that knowledge in a fictional format. Suzanne shares her knowledge of turtles, the area of Wilmington and Wrightsville Beach, and her novel with me. I hope you stick around. Welcome to Jacqui Just Chatters. I'm happy you are joining me today. I'm your hostess, Jacqui Lentz, and I'm trying to make the world a little better, one story at a time. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, leave a review, stars, or share with your friends. Episodes come out every other Thursday, but if you can't wait that long, you can go to my website or other socials. The links are in the episode notes. Let's get chatting. Hello, Suzanne, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Jacqui. Thank you for having me.
You've had a life full of wonderful twists and turns. Tell me about yourself and about your journey to who you are now.
I started writing when I was 9 years old. I was always a very avid reader. I loved to read. And one day, Hillary Goldberg, my friend, comes over and told me she's writing a book. And I was like, oh my God, I can write them too? This is awesome. So I started loving writing from an early age. I would write, but I didn't really have a voice. I went to college. I went to Chilean University and got my English degree. I didn't know how to do a writing career, so I was trying to do production work. And of course, at that time, there was a writer's strike in New York City. It seems common, doesn't it? That was like the first of, I think, of three. And I was working at HBO for a while. And then I ended up going to law school. And I didn't really find my voice until I got out of law school and I got married and had kids. And once I had my daughters, I have two, I finally understood who I was writing for. After years of doing my own law practice and raising kids who are now out of the house and just doing the things you do in life, I finally sat down and got serious about writing and really enjoying it.
So HBO, like, it sounds cool. Is it like, ooh, that's sexy? Like, I've worked for HBO. I'm guessing it's not as amazing as it sounds. Or was it? Like, that would be awesome.
I was working for them in the late 80s, and I was working in what was called the business administrative department, which is I wanted to get into production, but that was very hard to get into. So you get in any way you can. And business administration did all the legal contracts. And it was a really cool company when it started out. I seem to have gotten there like a few years after, when it was getting more bureaucratic and right before Time Warner acquired it. Because the people there used to say everyone from the president down would go out after work for drinks, and there were tons of affairs. And the other thing, the company was very employee friendly. So any class you wanted to take, you want to take parachuting, you want to do pottery, you want to start taking law classes, anything, they would pay for. So they had incredible benefits. They had this wonderful group of people. But by the time I got there, it had started to develop more into a company, and they started cutting those things back. I was so young. I was just in my 20s, and it was my first major corporate job in New York City. And I learned a lot. I did learn a lot being there.
You were living the dream, like the urban life in the 20s. That's what you want to do in your 20s. Cities are great in your 20s.
I don't know. If you saw my studio apartment, I'm not so sure you'd say that, but that's okay. I had this little studio in Hell's Kitchen that was just...
Oh, gosh.
I think the bathroom ceiling fell in at one point, and that was like, okay, I got to get out of this place.
That's true. Because if you're talking that time frame, New York was not New York. Not like what people think of today. New
Times
York
Square,
was sketchy.
Mm-hmm. Times Square had not been cleaned up yet. That came a little bit later.
Yeah, you were in the grimy, gritty New York.
The real New York. I was a real New Yorker. I lived through it.
Pivoting to a totally different topic. Sea turtles.
Sea turtles.
You are a fan. Actually, that's not even accurate. Way more about sea turtles than like the average person. I can't say like you're just a fan or kind of interest. Like yours goes way above that. What started your love affair with sea turtles?
I was at the beach with a couple of my friends, and one of them is a very big animal enthusiast. That's Aaron. And we were walking along Wrightsville Beach, and there was a turtle nest marked off, because that's what they do, is they put up the stakes and they mark off the area. And she started talking to the volunteer, who started explaining what it was like to watch this turtle nest and the turtles bubble up and erupt from the nest. And we had never seen that. We thought, this is cool. She said the nest was pretty much getting ready to hatch. So we put out chairs and we sat out every night, the next few nights, waiting to see the event. But unfortunately, our bedtime was about 11 o'clock by the time that we were ready to head back in. And we came out, I think it was the fourth night, and it turned out it had hatched about an hour after we left. I know, we're like, sitting there, we waited, but we put in our time. But the volunteer was very nice, and she said there might be a straggler. Sometimes there's one or two that'll come out afterwards that just didn't make it out, so it's worth waiting again to see. So we sat down, and Aaron started putting up YouTube videos of nest hatching so we could experience it as best we could. And we look over, and there's a bunch of people around the nest. So we head over there, and sure enough, there's a straggler coming out. Like, this little guy made it out of the nest, and he's making his way down the chute towards the ocean. And everyone's watching. It's very exciting. And then he gets past the point, because there's chutes set up for him to keep his focus from the lights. And he gets past the chute right before he gets to the water, and the pier lights pull him to the left. And so he starts walking diagonal to the ocean. And you're not allowed to touch a sea turtle. You're not allowed to interfere with it. You're not allowed to touch it. You're not allowed to. It's all illegal. It's like major fines, $15,000 in fines. And I don't know about imprisonment, but it's not a good thing. And so we knew we couldn't touch it. But Erin, being very smart, took off her black flip-flop and blocked him from looking at the pier. And so he turned again and started heading into the ocean. And she just kept following him along with one flip-flop after the other until he made it in and made it out. And it turned out that the group that watched the nests are called the Wrightsville Beach Sea Turtle Project. All volunteers, wonderful group. And they adopted making these little black cards with handles on the back to help other volunteers do that later on, because Erin did this with her flip-flop. But that was my...
Oh, that's wild. That's awesome.
I thought that was... We found that out 2 years later. They go, oh, you're the one. When I met with one of the people, the head person of the group, and she's like, you're the ones that did that. So yeah, we adopted that. That was Erin's contribution to sea turtles, I think, in general. But
Erin,
it was...
You're a legend.
Erin's a legend. What can I say? Erin just knows what to do at the right time.
Good job.
So she did a really good job of that. And that was probably the first time I really started to pay attention to the sea turtles. And when it came time for a character in my book to I had to decide what she was going to major in college. It suddenly occurred to me, let's work with the sea turtles. That's something that was, you start realizing how big it is in the community and out on the beach and talking to people. And it just seemed like a really interesting subject. And I thought this would be a really interesting thing for her to do.
For those of us, imagine you've got somebody who knows nothing about sea turtles. What's so amazing about it? Give us some basic facts about sea turtles, things we wouldn't know, and things like you talked a little bit about you can't touch them. Any other things you can or can't do, or just so lay some turtle on us.
Let's talk turtle. That's what we say.
That's
right? I do wonder, why they are so wildly popular, and they really are. And you look at them and they are some of the oldest creatures on Earth. They've remained essentially unchanged for about 110 million years. And in fact,
Wow.
there's 7 breeds of turtles. One of them is called the leatherback. It's the largest turtle species in the world. Average size can get up to 5 feet and 2,200 pounds. And
Oh,
they're huge, and it looks like a prehistoric animal. I've been told when they come up on shore to lay their eggs, it's like people would rush to go see it. It was a very interesting thing. The turtles that we have on Wrightsville Beach are typically green turtles.
oh,
They get to be about 3 to 4 feet. They're the second largest of all the turtles and weigh about 350 pounds.
oh.
Live 70 years or more. I think the oldest living one was 400 years old.
100 years old.
Yeah, 400 years old. Do you remember Finding Nemo and Marlin meets Crush?
I was going to ask.
Crush is 150 years old. He's a green sea turtle.
Okay, I was going to ask if he was a green or a leather, because of course when I think turtles, I think it's Finding Nemo.
I know everyone thinks that Crush is like one of the greatest all-time Disney characters ever. So yeah, he's just a very memorable character.
That's my best crush.
He is. He was wonderful. And at first I thought 50 years, is that right? And then when I started looking it up, they can't even tell how old some of the turtles are. So they estimate some turtles can go to 400 to 500 years, but it's hard to tell because there's been a lot of inquiry into research into what they call the lost years. When the baby turtles, the hatchlings, would go out into the ocean, they didn't know where they went for 2 years. They would come back as juveniles and then come back closer to shore, in the shelf closer to shore, and they'd live there until they started getting ready to lay eggs, and they would reach adulthood, and then they'd start coming back to the beaches where they were born to lay eggs.
That's amazing that they know that's home and I'm going back there every time, and because they travel.
Yes.
How do they know?
That's one of the things they're still trying to figure out. When I was researching for the book, I was very lucky because Dr. Kate Mansfield at the University of Central Florida spent a lot of time talking to me and explaining to me about her research. It was very helpful in the sense that, because she's really studying what they call the lost years, these 2 years where we don't know where the turtles go. Okay. And I would do research of my own and I'd run it by her. And then Kate would read it to let me know if this was accurate or not. And she's done a lot of research on it, and they're starting to understand where they go, that they basically go on this journey on the North Atlantic. It's called the Gyre, and it's a system of oceanic currents that circulate around the Atlantic Ocean in a clockwise route. Inside of it, there's like these dense colonies of seaweed in the area of the Sargasso Sea, and they think that they go there and just live there in the calm of the sea, eating seaweed and growing for these 2 years. And then as they become juveniles, they make their way back closer to shore.
That's amazing.
And that's what Crush do too. He's on that gyre. So Disney got some stuff right.
You talked a little bit about Kate Mansfield and like how did you learn all this stuff?
I started researching when I realized Jess, my character, was going to be a sea turtle biologist. I started figuring out, looking into what schools were best for that, and then went from there to the professor. And I really lucked out into finding her because it turns out she manages what's called the Marine Turtle Research Group. And she's got a group of these interns that go out every summer onto it's called the Archie Carr National Wildlife Reserve. It's down in around the Melbourne area of Florida, off of Cape Canaveral, down there. And the interns have this insane summer internship. They are up all night watching and tagging turtles and recording them and getting details about them. Then they have to get up in the morning and find tracks of the turtles that come up on the shore. And they do this 3 nights on, 4 nights off, so that they have this horrible upside down schedule where they're up all night. They say that they can't talk to their friends during the day because they're sleeping and their friends are asleep at night. So it's a little bit of an isolated community, but everyone I've talked to said they had an amazing time doing it. and they got all this information. And I was lucky enough for her to share with me some of her interns who gave me a lot of information and shared a lot of the stories, like with the leatherbacks. They said how exciting it was when a leatherback came on the beach. Everyone would instantly text each other, there's a leatherback on the beach, because it was unusual to see. And it was something you really wanted to see. These things were huge. Like I said, they're like prehistoric animals. Archie Carr it's actually, I think, the largest turtle nesting area in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And they get an insane amount of turtle nests. Yeah, I think you can't walk down the nest without tripping over a turtle, from what it sounds like. And they don't even track each nest. They pick every third one. And this year they've recorded 8,639 loggerhead nests, whereas Wrightsville Beach, they had 13. So it's a lot of nests that they get.
So when do they nest, and then how long does it take for them to hatch?
They nest pretty much from May to September. I think green turtles are May to September. Loggerheads will end in August, and the nests will sit and incubate for about 60 days. And then it's anybody's guess when they'll hatch. That's always the question every sea turtle volunteer gets and can't answer, is when will they hatch? And it comes down to weather conditions. It comes down to, they like to come out at night because it's a little colder. For some reason, they sense that. And that's when they tend to come out, which is better because of all the lights. The less light there is, that you really want to be guided by the moon on the ocean to get them out to the ocean waves. They have clutches. Each nest has about 100 to 120 eggs. And the interesting thing is they don't lay nests every year. It's usually, like for a loggerhead, it's every 2 to 3 years they'll lay nests, and then they'll do it a few times. Like they won't lay one nest and go away for 3 years. They'll lay like 2 or 3 nests. They keep coming back, lay a nest, come back, lay a nest, and then they'll go off for 2 or 3 years. So they just come back and do all this work. And I guess they need a big break. I guess I would if I laid 100 eggs and did that.
Wow. That's fascinating.
And they dig these really big holes. Like, you don't want to be near a turtle digging a nest because they're hitting sand all over the place. And the interns would talk about how it would be all over them if they were trying, because they would try to work with the turtles while they were digging the nest. They would try to take a sample of a scoot on one of its flippers, or they would have to measure its head and try to dodge this sand being kicked at them. They'd come home with, they said it would just be everywhere, like all in their clothes, all over the backpack. And that's if the bugs didn't get them.
I'd rather deal with sand than mosquitoes.
Right?
Yeah. That's how I feel.
I'm with you on that.
How can average people support these majestic animals?
There's great places, great ways to support them. Money always helps. We're going to put links, I believe, in your notes about the Karen Beasley Sea Turtle Rescue is located in Surf City, North Carolina. And that's one that's mentioned in the book. And then I'm actually donating part of the profits of the book too, to help them. They are one of the biggest sea turtle hospitals, I believe, if not in North Carolina, along the coast. Karen Beasley is a really interesting story in that it was a mother started it on behalf of her daughter. I think her daughter had passed away, but she had started this. It started in her garage, like just taking in injured turtles that would get hit by a boat strike, get caught up in fishing line, and would need some sort of help. So they would take them in. And so they would take them in the garage, and then they moved to a smaller building. And now they have a bigger facility that you can go visit, which is really neat to go visit. They have the big tubs where you can see the turtles that they're working with. And they have a vet that comes in, and they have a surgical room. And they really do a lot to help bring turtles that have been injured some medical care. And then they have big release parties, and all that stuff can be found on the websites. They also,
wonderful.
One of the more interesting things you can do too is adopt a turtle. I've given Erin a turtle for her birthday. And another friend gave me actually a turtle that I could track online. And I think that came through. That wasn't Karen Beasley, but I can find out where that was too, because that was really interesting. You were seeing where the turtle was going all through the Gulf of Mexico and up and down, and its route. They had a tracker on it, which is something Kate Mansfield worked with, is putting trackers on the turtles.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, so I will put links to all these different organizations on the website in the episode notes, so that way anyone who wants to learn more, support them, whatever, it's all there.
And they have great, like, I got my baseball sea turtle hat and t-shirts and stuff like that, but they also have Most of them have what they call turtle talks. Usually they're like on a Tuesday night. If you look at the website, if you're ever in the area of any of these groups, and they'll take you out like on a Tuesday night for half an hour and explain about the turtles and the migration and how they lay the nests on the beach and just how it works in their particular area.
Wonderful. All right. You've already talked about a bit with your book of how your main character, that was her passion, is sea turtles. And I loved the section where she was doing the internship. And I could really tell like all this information that you got. It was just so realistic. Like I could picture it. I was there, and I really liked that part of the book because you learned a bunch, and it was also like about her character. It was wonderful.
No, I really appreciate that. And that again, that was the interns gave me the best stories, and they really gave me an idea of what it was like to be down there, because that section of the book was written during COVID, and there was no way for me to get down there and to really look at it. And in fact, again, some literary license, my understanding is the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge is basically that area, even though it's federally reserved for protecting the turtles, is a fairly public area. So I would think that you wouldn't be allowed to go in there and walk around, but apparently you really can. And there's a lot of traffic and even houses nearby. I gave it more of a romantic edge of making it a little bit more exiled and a little less suburban, but it's a really interesting area.
Your book is called Wrightsville Beach. Give us a brief introduction, what's the book about? Give us the blurb.
It's set in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we have Hank, our local guy, who's gotten into some trouble, trying to make his way out. He meets Jess, the UNCW student, and they have this wonderful romance for a summer. And at the end of the summer, a very tragic event happens that splits them apart. And then we follow them each for 6 years to see where their lives go after that moment. And they've never forgotten each other, but they go on to live their lives. And Jess goes down to work with the sea turtles down at Archie Carr and becomes a sea turtle biologist. So we work a lot with it. I had a lot of fun with that section with working with the turtles. And at some point, she does come back to Wilmington for work reasons, and they do meet up again. And then the question is, do they get back together?
What inspired this book in the first place?
It came in waves. Like the first character that came to me very strongly was Hank. And it was Hank. And the first thing I sat down and wrote one night was Hank and the relationship with his brother and how he really admired his older brother, but I knew his older brother had died. And I had him in my head. And I realized I started to think about what to do with this character. And I thought my younger daughter was 15 at the time. Then I realized I wanted it to be more of a relationship novel as something to show my daughter what a good relationship was like. So I used her as my inspiration for Jess, and it started to become a relationship novel. And then I thought, where do I want to set it? And I thought, we go to Wrightsville Beach at least a couple of times a year. I've been going since the late 80s. My mother moved down there, and so we became very familiar with it early on. And it's just my second home. So I thought, I can't be there. So why don't I think about being there? And I did a whole board of pictures and stuff. So I'd be thinking about it as I wrote. So I set it in Wrightsville Beach. And then from there, it just built, because initially the book was supposed to be the summer romance and it was going to end there. But then I had them breaking apart at the summer romance, which is not new. It's on the back cover, and then it became, we followed Hank for a while. And I thought, we followed Hank, we got to follow her now. And was she going to, and so each section came along on its own. It was initially going to be this short summer romance, but it just kept growing. And I guess because it took me about 5 years to write it, she kept growing. So I had more stuff to tell her, because I basically would put in things that I wanted her to think about while going through college, and those decisions you make about what you're going to do and how you're going to live your life and where you're going to end up. And so I was able to put that into the novel as a way of trying to share that with her when she really didn't want to listen to me at 17 or 18. Here, honey, just read this.
your daughter was a big inspiration for the book and one of the characters. Has she read the book?
She keeps telling me she's going to get to it. Which is hilarious because it's just like I'm going to write 2 more books and then maybe she'll get to it. She understands what the book's about. She's very excited about the book. She's been a very good supporter, but she's like most young women her age. She's in her life, in her world. So I think she'll get to it. She'll get to it.
Your book, it is such a love letter to Wilmington, North Carolina, as well as the turtles. Tell us about how these influenced your novel and like how you took these things that you love and wove them into the story.
I think what I love about writing is that I get to picture myself in another life and what it would be like to live that life. And I had gone to college in a really interesting city, New Orleans, but I would also have loved to go to college at the beach in that area because it was so interesting to me. And I thought this would have been a really interesting experience, but you can only live one. You got to choose one, right? You can't live them all. So I used it basically as what do I think my or my daughter's life would be like living there, and what would I want to see happen? What would I find interesting and want to happen while I'm there? So that helped me a lot in terms of deciding where the characters would go, what sort of activities that they had. And I think the most interesting part was I didn't know a lot about downtown Wilmington, which is a really cute little historic town.
Yes.
Yeah. If you visit, that's what was so interesting about Wilmington is we had this whole beach area, but we also have Wilmington, which is just in itself quaint and charming, lots of history. And I had to research a lot of these places, especially when Hank's getting involved in the community. I had never heard of the group that he ended up working with in terms of repairing houses or the old beach houses on the beach. I never knew about these antique beach houses that were historic. And it gave me the chance to really look at Thalian Hall and Bellamy Mansion and try to figure out great ways to weave them in.
I gave a squeal when you wrote about the Bellamy Mansion. I've been to Bellamy.
Did you really?
I took a tour. It was fantastic. And I have a podcast about going to North Carolina. Actually, I've done a couple of them. And in one of them, I talk about going to Bellamy and the awesome stories they told. And it's fantastic. If you are in Wilmington, North Carolina, so visit that place. Yep. It is wonderful.
I've been to Southport in the last couple of years, and they've got, yes, I went to Fishy like you did.
Oh,
I heard your podcast.
You got the shrimp tacos?
I probably got the shrimp tacos too. But Oak Island had enough beach and was not commercial enough that it probably gets a fair share of sea turtles as well. I just don't know how many.
That's one of the reasons I like it is Oak Island is nothing like Myrtle Beach. It is, you go there and you're renting a house or a condo and it's just people who want to be around the ocean. That is what you do. There's not a lot of other things to do. I love going in when the tide's coming in and you just let the waves like, okay, we're going to go out there and then jump as a wave comes and just let it ride you. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a blast. And I'll do that till I exhaust myself. And then we go in. And
I'm with you. This is one of the reasons I love going down to Wilmington and Wrightsville Beach. And it used to be, when my mother moved down there in the late 80s, I-40, which is the direct line from I-95 to Wilmington, was just built. Before that, it was, if you've ever gone out to one of the other islands like Emerald Isle or Atlantic Beach, you have to weave your way in from 95. And it takes a while. And they built I-40. And my mother had always wanted to live by the ocean, and she was selling her house in Jersey and was ready to go somewhere where she really wanted to be. And she discovered Wilmington and she moves down there. And she's so funny because I'm by the beach. I'm so happy. And I get a call like a week later and I was like, there's not even a gap down here. What am I doing here? She had to make an effort to go out and get to some of the major chains, but that changed within 10 years. They were all down there because once I-40 was built, it developed quite a bit and became much more of a commercial place. So it made it much more accessible. And in that case, some of it was good. And then some of it made it a little bit more crowded. But it's just always been a wonderful place to visit for so many people.
If you guys want a vicarious trip to North Carolina, the book's really good for that. Like, you're going to get a heavy dose of Wilmington and that area.
If you want to see some of these places too, I capture them on Facebook and Instagram. I try to talk about the places, because it's so many real places I use in the book. I'll talk about them online. I even did some TikTok videos for a while, but I've just paused that for a little bit.
I'm going to put all the socials and where you can find about Suzanne and everything. Where can they buy your book?
If you go onto my website, which is goodwynbooks.com, Goodwyn with a Y, it mentions Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go through independent bookstores. It gives a number of different links. There's also an excerpt online if they want to get a feel for the first couple of chapters of the book, and talks about just how I wrote it, a little bit about my background. So there's
fabulous.
And if you don't have Amazon Prime and you want the book, just call. I love independent bookstores. Absolutely love them. And just call your local independent bookstore, ask them if they have it. And chances are they might not, because local bookstores are small and they curate. Unless I visited them personally, it's very unlikely they'll have it, but they'll get it for you. And you don't pay any of that shipping and handling. They'll get it in. So it's always a good idea to give them a call. And because I like to support them as well. Barnes & Noble's been wonderful to me also in terms of a lot of signings. So sometimes they have it as well. But I always like say, give a call to your local bookstore too. And they usually will get it in for you.
Independents are great. We don't have one around me.
I love going to independent bookstores. Whenever I go somewhere, I love going to them. And I've run into some really fun ones. I love the ones in the old houses that are in the nooks and crannies, and you got places to read. And it's just so much fun to me. I just love it.
That's the fun thing about an independent. Like, everyone's different. You don't know what you're going to find. Though usually what you will get, the people who sell the books, they really know books.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they are
really
readers.
Love them. Yeah.
And you can get wonderful suggestions. They are book people.
Yes.
That's always awesome.
And believe it or not, independent bookstores have personalities. They usually cater sometimes more to one genre than the other. So they usually try to have a little bit of everything. It's very curated, they'll tell you. I did a trip through Maine last year. We did the town where Bowdoin College is, where Olive Kittredge, Elizabeth Strout lives. I can't remember the exact name of the town right now, but there was both a used bookstore, and I went in and talked to them for a bit. And then there was a regular bookstore, and I went in and talked to that gentleman for a bit. And both times, I'm telling you, I got more gossip on that town in those two visits. Like, they know what's going on. They're locals. They're like, yeah, so this is what's happening, and this is who does what. And I'm like, oh, this is great stuff.
Okay. It's funny you mentioned that, because that general area is where I placed my second book.
Okay, I was wondering what town. Okay.
It's a fictional little town, but it's near there. That was the area that I've decided that's where this town is.
Okay. Then I like your little town, because that was a cute little town. We had a nice day there. Definitely did. And I still love those women. Those women were so wonderful at the used bookstore.
This has been delightful. I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and being part of this fantastic chat.
Oh, thank you so much, Jacqui. I really enjoyed it.
I learned a lot about turtles from Suzanne. I hope you have as well. In the episode notes are links for her, turtle sites, and for me as well. If you have a comment you'd like to make, you can head over to this episode on my website and leave one there. Thanks for coming along on this chat and sticking around until the end. A shout out to all my listeners in Ohio. Hey there. Are you taking care of yourself? Don't forget, you are good enough as you are. I hope you come back for my next episode. And my chat chair will be my husband, and we are going to talk about board games. Until next time, I wish you well.